Welcome to Comic Toy Reviews. This is a review on the X-Men Omnibus. This is part 2 of 2 on the X-Men run of Jim Lee. The first volume that I reviewed on this channel was the run by Jim Lee and Mark Silvestri. Anyway, this second volume concludes the Jim Lee X-Men run and also has Whilce Portacio in this volume. Both artists were red hot in the early 90s. This collects issues X Factor 63 to 70 and Uncanny X-Men 273 to 280, and the X-Men, the other run for the series, issues 1 to 9, and material from issues 10 and 11, and Ghost Rider 26 and 27. Now you might say, why is some Ghost Rider stuff in there and some X Factor? Well, back then, storyline wise, the storylines really connected and one led to the other, and there was some crossing over in the story material, and that you really needed to read the other issues to comprehend storyline wise what was going on. They have two different covers. This is the regular cover, and they have a direct market cover. This is the inside of the Omnibus cover. This is the opening page. You can see it says Volume 2 and what it's collecting, which I just mentioned. You can see writer Chris Claremont, and pencilers, even though there's quite a few, the majority is Jim Lee and Whilce Portacio. Table of contents, it starts at February 1991 and it ends on X-Men 11 August 1992. The first few pages of the volume just sort of doing a recap and the backstory of stuff that happened before this volume. And the first issue in the Omnibus here is X Factor 63 and Whilce Portacio art style. I had quite a few of these X Factor and X-Men issues back then, and I thought it was a high point for the X Factor book when Whilce Portacio was doing the art for the series, because his style back then in the early 90s, I mean, he really was a great artist. His stuff back then, still great, but his Marvel stuff, really nice work. And this volume over here, this was also the very beginning and early issues of Cable, and he was a mysterious character back then in the X-Men universe. This volume also has the stories with the Shi'ar Empire, and big storyline there when Professor X basically returns to the X-Men books, because he was a character that's been away for quite a number of years from the X-Men scene, and the characters weren't with him in terms of him being their leader or anything like that for quite a number of years in the storyline. And this also starts out and has that whole Savage Land, Magneto, Rogue, and storyline. And Magneto back then in the books, he was sort of a hero, and this volume he turns back to a villain. Nick Fury is in this storyline as well. Really good stuff. You also see in this volume those classic yellow and blue costumes that associate it with Jim Lee a lot. It's a classic cover here. This is issue 275. This was, I think, like a 3 or 4 part storyline in the whole Kree, Shia type Imperial Guard here storyline. A really good volume of stuff. Compared to the first volume, which had a separate review on this channel, the first volume was mostly Mark Silverstreet, and then it transitioned into Jim Lee. This volume, the second one, it's mostly Jim Lee and Whilce Portacio. I don't think there's really any Mark Silverstreet here in this volume. And it's this volume that the Jim Lee X-Men run really was a hot commodity back then. It was a top-selling book. And hopefully if you see some of these pages, you can see why that this run was really influential in terms of the Marvel Comics. It was like one of their top-selling books, and the X-Men were, back then in the early 90s, a much hotter commodity in terms of Marvel Comics. In the last decade, it's been mostly different, kind of like the Avengers have taken over the top spot at Marvel Comics for a team. Also, you could see in the cover here, in the early appearances of Gambit, he had a rivalry with Wolverine. They were pretty much not on friendly terms. And back then, Gambit was the new character in the books, and the other characters are trying to adjust to him and what he brought to the team. Also in X Factor, Apocalypse was the main bad guy, and we're talking about the original X-Men, like Cyclops and Iceman. So it's basically like, even though it's called X Factor, it was more like X-Men, really. Really nice art here. Just going through that storyline a little quickly here. This was a pivotal issue for X Factor and the X-Men books for a bit. Resolved some storylines in regards to Cable and Apocalypse. Had about a 3-part storyline here with the Shadow King. That was an X-Men villain, really a Professor X villain and a rival. And this was when the book was Uncanny X-men, and this volume, this omnibus, also is the transition into the second X-Men monthly book that was just titled X-Men and not Uncanny X-Men. And That's the one that had the Jim Lee 7 million comics print run back then. And you could see right here in the volume, some guest pencilers here. But right here, this is what I'm talking about. Right on the second half of this volume, that was the initial 11 issues that Jim Lee was the artist in. And it was at this volume that Jim Lee, he left the book after this, after issue 11, and then he went on to form Image Comics with the other Image Comics partners, and he made books like Wildcats and Stormwatch and other volumes. And other than a crossover he had where he did the art for this Wildcats X-men crossover, other than that, he really hasn't worked at Marvel anymore in terms of an official capacity in any X-Men related material or anything like that, because eventually he sold his company to DC Comics, and now he's become one of the top names at DC Comics in terms of, he's like co-publisher or something, and Jim Lee is basically one of, if not the top guys at DC. And so his chances of returning to Marvel or any X-Men work or anything like that, it's realistically not going to happen. So his Marvel run as a creator, for the most part, it's done. If you want to see Jim Lee's work now, his work will be at DC on Batman and Superman, all the DC icons like the Justice League. And so this volume really, even though they didn't say these two volumes, the first one, which was another review, and the second one, even though they didn't call it officially the Jim Lee run, the truth is, what the selling point of this second volume is that it includes those Jim Lee issues and completes that run that he had with Marvel Comics. And that it's great to have it all in these two volumes. It's great to have it all organized, all the issues together. And the X-Men books then were really, the stuff was top notch. You can see that this book was that series that really changed things for quite a while in terms of the X-World. Also see Rogue with Gambit. It was in this volume that storyline idea started as well. This was like a 3-part storyline with Omega Red, and also the first appearance of Omega Red. It's been a Wolverine villain that's stayed around in the books ever since. Also introduces Maverick as another character that's been around for the books that lasted. The selling point of this second volume, as mentioned, it's really the Jim Lee art and his X-Men work to be all in one volume. But just the era that is in this volume and the other volume. It's a really good era of books. And right here, that's issue 11, the last Jim Lee X-Men book at this volume, and his run at Marvel. Here's something nice. They have a lot of nice extras in terms of bonus material here, like pin-ups and other material, and it's almost all on Jim Lee. No coincidence why. Like early sketches and some rare art. But the really cool bonus material here is they included 100 card X-Men Jim Lee cards that he drew. It was basically a trading card set, and Jim Lee did like 100 cards of X-Men related and character art. And it's nice that Marvel reprinted those cards here. Nice bonus material. The bonus material in this second volume, it's better than the bonus material in the first volume. It also includes some huge, like, triple gatefold type cover, and same thing here in the volume. This X-Men Omnibus Volume 2, like the first volume, this concludes the Jim Lee Omnibus material, and it concludes his run on the X-Men and the X-World characters that he did back then. A very influential run in comic books. One of the many career highlights that Jim Lee has done. This volume has a cover price of $125, which is more than the $99 cover price of the other omnibuses. Not sure if they were just banking in on the Jim Lee name Marvel for the price increase. But overall, and with discounts, it's like a $70 range you could find it for online. I'd recommend this volume for anyone with nostalgia, or anyone who likes Jim Lee stuff and liked his Marvel run. He's not going to be working at Marvel anymore. His stuff is definitely DC from now on. But this is a great look back and a great some great issues here in terms of story and art, and hopefully this volume helped show that to you. Highly recommended volume, and that's the review. Thanks for watching, and talk to you later.